أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Hidayat TV and our live show tonight, the Islamic Insight. Inshallah, tonight we'll be exploring the subject of the occultation of our Imam of our time, Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'alahu Faraj al-Sharif. Here with me in the studio, I would like to welcome Brother Shabbar Mahdi, who will inshallah answer some of our questions, helping us to gain a better understanding around the occultation and the issues surrounding the occultation. Inshallah, we'll start the discussion off with recitation of the Holy Quran. Okay. Brother Shabbar.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عما يتساءلون عن النبأ العظيم الذي هم فيه مختلفون كلا سيعلمون ثم كلا سيعلمون ألم نجعل الأرض مهادا والجبال أوتادا وخلقناكم أزواجا وجعلنا نومكم سباتا وجعلنا الليل لباسا وجعلنا النهار معاشا وبنينا فوقكم سبعا شدادا وجعلنا السراج وهاجا وأنزلنا من المعصرات ماء ثجاجا لنخرج به حبا ونباتا وجنات الفافا إن يوم الفصل كان ميقات يوم ينفخ في الصور فتأتون أفواجا صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Brother Shabbar, thank you very much for that inspirational recitation. Dear viewers, this is an interactive show, so inshallah please dial in on the numbers you see on your screen, and inshallah we will endeavor to answer your questions in relation to this topic. So just a reminder, the topic of today, the occultation of Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif. So Brother Shabbar, can you kindly explain to us what is the occultation?
So the occultation, known in the Arabic language as ghaiba, is of course, as we know, of two different types. The first is ghaibat al-sughra, the second is ghaibat al-kubra. Within this world you find the materialistic, tangible things we see in front of us. So you find this book, you find me and you, we can see each other, these glasses, this table. Tangible, visible with our eyes. Ghaiba is when this said thing which is visible to us then becomes invisible by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, me and you are sitting somewhere and there's someone also there present. By the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a curtain, of course invisible, a metaphorical, we're using metaphorical language, a curtain is placed over that person so that he is no longer visible even though he or she is present there. So they are there currently, but we can't see them with our physical eye. With the human eye, we are unable to see them. This is ghaibah. And we find that when the Imam went into occultation, this is what happened. For he was within Samara, he was within certain areas, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, he covered the Imam in this curtain, in this veil, covering him from us and our visible eyes. And of course, that can also be lifted in certain areas. So some people can see the Imam when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unveils a curtain for certain people. But this is around the Imam so that he is hidden. This is ghaibah.
So why is it then that the Imam of our time needs to be in ghaibah?
Understanding the philosophy of any action is very important within the religion of Islam. For example, you have falsafa ahkam. On Islamic Insight itself, we've talked about falsafa ahkam to an extent, which is philosophy of religious rulings. So why is it that we pray 5 times a day? Why is it that this thing is haram? Why is it that this thing is halal, etc.? Falsafa ahkam. Falsafa, meaning philosophy within the Arabic language, is important because it gives us a greater insight into a subject. So we can have greater insight within fiqh if we understand why these rulings are the way in which they are. In the same way, you can have falsafa of certain events in history. For example, why is it that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wasalam did this or did that? Why did the Holy Prophet of Islam, when he went to battle, act in this way? When you look at the philosophy of these actions, you find more about the character of the said person you are dealing with. So for example, why is it that Amir al-Mu'mineen very famously, when the man Amr ibn Abdul spat in his face, why did he get up? Look at the philosophy of this, you realize, and the Imam answered, everyone knows. By understanding the philosophy of this action, then you understand the Imam deeper, you understand his character. That's why we need to also look at every aspect of the Imam Ajillahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif's life. Look at the philosophy, look at why this happened. Why is it that he was Imam at a young age? Why is it that there were 2 ghaibah? Inshallah, we'll look in the future in today's session. The question is, why is it that the Imam had to go in occultation in the first place? Now, as we mentioned last week, that Imam Mahdi Ajillahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif, his life, his aim, his target, the way he will uprise, etc., his whole life was documented in ahadith by the Imam and the infallible. So they would talk about the Imam even though his coming was many years later, hundreds of years in some cases. They would mention the Imam, and they would mention, for example, the ahadith that he will have 2 occultations, one will be long, one will be short. Or for example, he will uprise here and the signs are there. Of course, we'll look at one day, inshallah, about the signs of his uprisal. This question was also asked to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam by a man known as Abdullah bin Fadl. Abdullah bin Fadl, he came to the Imam and asked, why is it, Ya Imam, that the Mahdi from your descendants will go into occultation? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam replied in a beautiful way. He said that we are not allowed to reveal this reason to you. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen this reason to be hidden from the people in the same way He has chosen the reasons for other occultations to be hidden. Other Anbiya, they went into occultations, and also the Aimma alayhim salam for slight periods of time. Imam Sadiq says, other of the hujjats of Allah were also put into occultation, and the reason for this was only revealed after they came out of occultation. So in the same way, when the Imam Ajillahu Ta'ala Faraj Sharif comes out of occultation, then the reason behind his occultation will be revealed to you. And then he gives an example. Then he says, for example, Nabi Musa and Nabi Khizr salamullahi alayhima, the whole story that happened with the boats, and for example, Nabi Khizr, he made a hole in the boats that they were traveling in, and the whole story is there. Or for example, he killed that man, or he pushed that wall back. These 3 things occurred. At the time, Nabi Musa alayhi salam didn't know what was happening. These things were hidden from him. Afterwards, Nabi Khizr, through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, explained. So Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says, in the same way, after the uprising of the Imam, it will be explained to the mu'mineen why the ghaibah took place. However, that's one narration. Of course, there are always conflicting narrations within the books. Other narrations from other of the Imam say, for example, that the reason why there was the occultation, number one primarily was so that the Imam would never have to do or give allegiance or pay allegiance to any other ruler. In the way that Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, they tried to make Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam pay allegiance to Yazid. And also other Imam were forced or tried to pay allegiance to the tyrant rulers of their time, so that the Imam would not be forced or not being asked or pressurized into, of course he would never do so, but just so that he would never have been asked to pay allegiance to any tyrant ruler. This is one of the reasons why he was put in Ghaiba. For example, let's say he wasn't in Ghaiba, he was asked to pay allegiance, he didn't, and there was a war and there would be bloodshed. To prevent this, the Imam is in Ghaiba. The second reason is some say that the safety of his life. The Imam openly says in other narrations and anecdotes, you find he's not scared of his own life. Of course, the Ahlul Bayt alayhim are willing to give their lives for Islam, and they have done in the past. It's nothing new for them. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He works in mysterious ways. We don't know. Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Ya Allah, you know that which we don't know. So there is a reasoning behind maybe prolonging the Imam's life. And of course, some people also ask the question, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could not have, sort of in a metaphorical way, created a bubble around the Imam, so that we can see him, but anyone who would try and hit him or harm him would be blocked by this bubble, by this supernatural force? The answer is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like doing things in an unnatural way. He sticks to the order of this universe. He doesn't have to. Which is why, to prevent people from hurting the Imam other than using an unnatural option, he put the Imam in Ghaiba. So there are conflicting narrations, but we understand that it's to do with prolonging the Imam's life and also protecting him and also preventing him from doing bay'ah of any tyrant ruler.
Okay, so now that we understand the reason of the occultation and why it's necessary that the Imam of our time had to go into occultation, I'd like to ask you as to why are there two occultations? You mentioned that there are two types, but what's the reason for this?
Okay. The first thing which is important to mention is whether you call it Kubra and Sughra, or you call it something else, you call it the shorter and the longer, or the big and the small, that doesn't matter. The fundamental belief is that there were two. The first, of course, some say, for the Imam was born in 255 AH, he became an Imam, as in his father passed away, in 260 AH. So some count the 5 years as part of the Ghaiba, some say only from 260. And that Ghaiba in total was around 69 to 74 years, depending on how you count it. The question that comes in, is a very valid question, is why is it that there were two occultations? What's the need? Why is it that the Imam didn't just give one long, or was not in just one long occultation? So there wasn't need to split it into two. In between the two occultations, there was a time when certain believers were told where the Imam was, and they came to see the Imam, and they would talk to the Imam, and he would give them advice in between the two occultations. Why is it though, Ya Imam, that you need these two? The answer deals with history and the attitudes of the other mu'mineen and Muslimin. The other mu'mineen, the other Muslimin, from the time of the first Imam to the time of the 11th, they were used to always to seeing their Imam in front of them. We mentioned, I think last week, even though they were gunahgar, even though they were sinners, even though they may have been munafiqeen, so they may not have been true believers, they were always used to and were always able to see their Imam in front of them. So whatever question they would have, they would just go straight to the Imam. Any query, any other problems, they would go, our khums we just give to the Imam. Then, of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was preparing the people. He knew that their time will come where, for example, we can't see the Imam. Will people be used to this? Which is why from the 10th Imam ﷺ's time, the 10th and the 11th, when they would go out less. So they would stay in their homes, and of course they were imprisoned also, but they would stay in their homes more, or they would talk to people through intermediaries to prepare them for the 12th Imam. Because they were preparing people that a time will come where you won't be able to see your Imam directly. It'll be through an intermediary. Why to Ghaiba? So that, because the people were so desperate to see the Imam and they were used to seeing their Imam previously, the Imam had two occultations. So that in between the shorter one, other people would come and see their Imam, strengthen their faith once again in the Imam, and then be ready for the Ghaibat al-Kubra. So this gap was needed to ensure that the faith of the mu'mineen was remained strong. Now, an interesting story that we find is to do with how the Imam went in Ghaiba in the first place. How is it that the Imam went into Ghaibat al-Sughra? There were many different rulers of the Abbasid Khalif which were rulers in the time of the 11th and the 12th Imams. Many different, long list of names, about 8. And of course what they would do is they would put their spies in different areas. Not only in the areas where the Imam was suspected to be, also in areas much further away, where they were Shia, because they knew that it is possible that even though the Imam and Imam Hassan al-Askari والسلام, will be in Samarra, it is also possible that the 12th Imam may be in some faraway place with other Shia. So they put their spies primarily in Samarra, but also in other places. And the spies, what would they do? When they would even hear someone mentioning the name of Imam al-Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif or Imam Hassan al-Askari salatullahi wa salamu alayhi, they'd cut their heads off. Hakima Khatun salamullahi alayha, we mentioned last week about her, the auntie of Imam Hassan al-Askari. She was so worried. Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam was so worried that their followers were being killed. So Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam says, or sent out a message to his followers. He said, "O my followers, do not ever mention my name. Even if you think this is a gathering where I know everyone and I trust everyone, don't mention my name, for there could be spies there and they could cut your heads off." So this happened, these spies were there. And at the time, Mu'tamad was the ruler, and he was the one that sent his spies. Mu'tamad died and Mu'taz came. Mu'taz came. There were other political issues that he was involved in. After these issues were resolved, he put his attention on finding the 12th Imam and trying to kill him. And so once again, he sent his spies. He sent these spies out, and he was told by some of his infiltrators and detectives and spies that there is a house in Samarra which looks suspicious. So he, Mu'tas, what he did, he sent a large number of his army and spies, etc., and his people to go to that house, and he gave them an order. Whoever you find in that house, kill them straight away. Don't ask anything, just kill them. So these people, they went in. They went in. Outside the house, however, they saw there was a ghulam, a servant, and he was sewing some clothes. They asked, "Who's within this house?" He replied, "My master, the master of this house and the owner of this house is within this house." So they entered and they saw a beautiful scene. Beautiful scene. There was a river flowing in between the house. And of course, flowers and whatever, different colors, of course, like a heavenly scene was there present. They saw on the river itself, on the stream, there was a person praying. The person was praying, and what was their order? Kill whoever you see within this house. So a few people, they saw on the musalla and the man was praying. They tried to go forward and kill him. They tried to go into the river. They immediately started to drown. Immediately. Even if it was shallow water, they would start to drown. Other people then came and helped that person. Someone else tried, drowned again. Someone else helped him out. Then they realized, okay, look, this is a miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This person is someone special. They were scared, they ran back. They ran back to Mu'taz, telling him this whole story, what had happened. Mu'taz then sent another group of people. And this time, for those of you who have been, or those of the viewers who have been to Samarra, they'll see the sardab. Sardab is the cellar underneath the house, and during that time the weather was very hot. So the sardab would be there to cool the people during hot weather, and also the water that would be placed in the sardab would remain cold. Sardab type of cellar. They searched the whole house. This time they found no one, when they suddenly heard beautiful Quran being recited from the sardab. They realized, okay, look, this is the Imam. They went in there and they covered the whole place. For some reason their eyes were covered. Some people saw this person going right past them, but they were unable to do anything. They were unable to do anything. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed these restrictions off their body. They looked around. The commander of the time says, "Where is this person that was just here?" His followers said, "He just went past us, but we couldn't do anything." This was the Imam, and this is when Ghaybat al-Sughra occurred. So this is the whole story, in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was always and will always protect the Imam, Az-Zaman ajallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. And this is the way in which the Imam went to Ghayba, which is why even today those people that go to Sardab, they recite 2 rakat salat, because they realize that the Imam was here at one point.
So you mentioned how the Ghaybat al-Sughra took place. So what's the main difference between both the Ghayba, so Ghaybat al-Kubra? How did that occur, and what's the difference between that and the first one that you mentioned?
Ghaibat al-Sughra, as we mentioned, was 69 to 74 years. After that, the Imam, through his deputy, or told his deputy to announce that after my deputy passes away, Ghaibat al-Kubra will settle in. The main difference is that within Ghaibat al-Sughra, there were 4 naibs, as we mentioned, the 4 deputies, and these allowed constant contact of the believers with the Imam. So whenever the believers had any query, they would write, they'd give it to the deputy would give it to the Imam would then reply with his own writing. Shaykh Mufid narrates, rahmatullah alayhi, that it came to a point where people recognized the Imam's writing. They knew what the Imam's handwriting was like. The Imam was in constant communication with his followers during Ghaibat al-Sughra, and many people of his trusted and sincere followers knew where he was. Of course, he was still in this concealment, in this occultation, but many of his followers knew where he was. And many, whenever they would have a problem, whenever they were, for example, leaving for Hajj or Ziyarat, they would always ask the Imam, is it okay for me to go to Hajj? Is it okay for me to go to... For example, one person, he asked the Imam, I want to go to Ziyarah, is it okay for me to go? The Imam replied, no. So he said, okay, the Imam knows, of course. Why did I ask him? Because he knows what I don't know. He has ilm of ghaib. What happened, he realized afterwards that that caravan within which he was about to go into was raided. And so the people were looted and other things happened. So of course he was happy that the Imam was wishing for his safety. Then he wrote back to the Imam, Ya Imam, can I go by boat? The Imam said, no, don't go by boat. Later on, he realized that there were a certain group and a certain clan and a certain tribe which were raiding the boats and looting the people. Then he writes, I was so happy and so pleased to see how the Imam was wishing for my safety and ensuring that I was safe. In Ghaibat al-Sughra, this constant connection between the followers and the Imam was there, even though it was through an intermediary, even though many or majority of the followers weren't able to see their Imam. Many did know where the Imam was, and all or majority were able to have some communication with the Imam. So this was Ghaibat al-Sughra. Ghaibat al-Kubra, as we know, I say only very sincere servants of the Imam know where he is at any given point in time. Do we know where the Imam is? No. But only his most sincere servants know where he is, and this regular communication, of course we can write our Arida and the Imam gets it, but we don't have this constant replying and etc. So this is the difference between Ghaibat al-Sughra and Ghaibat al-Kubra.
Okay, so often when we hear about the occultation and surrounding the issues surrounding the occultation, we often hear about these 4 naibs. What were these 4 naibs and what role did they play during this time period?
The 4 naibs first we'll mention, and then inshallah we'll look at the role. There are 4 names. Uthman bin Sa'id, Muhammad bin Ithman, Hussein bin Rawh, and Ali bin Muhammad Samri.
So these were the 4?
These were the 4.
Okay.
Now a question comes even in, I can't remember which book, but in one book they were mentioning all the deputies of the Imam, and there was a long list. The question comes, are there 4 or are there more? These 4 were the 4 main sole representatives of the Imam. They then delegated responsibility to other people. For example, last session we looked at Ahmad bin Ishaq, who was the representative of the Imam in Qum. But he wasn't one of the main representatives. One of the main representatives were these 4 that we just mentioned. Their role was to delegate this responsibility. So the Imam would say, okay, look, Muhammad bin Uthman, delegate responsibility for the province of Qum to Ahmad bin Ishaq, for example. Delegate this province to this person. Their main issue was to manage these other delegates, primarily. Secondly, they would collect the khums and other things. For example, some people would have other amounts of money to give to the Imam, they would give to. Or also the delegates would give to these 4 deputies, one of these 4, which would then give to the Imam. And these deputies were the main point of contact towards the Imam. So for example, if anyone had a query, they'd go to the delegates, who would go to the main deputy at the time, who would then take them to the Imam, who would take their query to the Imam. So they were the main point of contact, and they were the most sincere servants of the Imam. As we mentioned, there were 4. Uthman bin Sa'id, he served the 10th, 11th and 12th Imam. All of the 10th, 11th and 12th, 3 Imams, salamullahi alayhim, he served them. And you'll find narrations where the 10th Imam says that he is one of my most trustworthy servants. And of course, you have to be trustworthy to be under the Imam. You have to have insaf and justice. At the time, his title was Samman. Samman within the Arabic language means oil merchant. The question comes, is he a deputy? Is he an oil merchant? The reply is that Samman, oil merchant, why was he called this? Is because, as we just mentioned, the spies were set in different areas. When he would need to bring khums and other money, he would hide it in an oil can. And he would take it, and people would think, okay, this is just an ordinary oil merchant. He would, of course, take that to the Imam, and hidden in there would be the amount of money given to certain people to hide it from these spies. And so he became famous as Samman, the oil merchant. And he was a very good wakil and very good deputy of the Imam. And he served the Imam for a few years. His son then came. His son Muhammad bin Uthman then came, who served the Imam for the longest period of time, around 40 years. He was, of course, people would say, or the Imams mentioned about him, that even before he became deputy of the Imam, and even when his father were deputies of the A'immah alayhim as-salam, he was a very trustworthy individual. Very trustworthy. In fact, once a certain person, he wrote an inquiry to the Imam and gave it to Muhammad bin Uthman, who of course gave it to the Imam. When the Imam replied, he put the reply, and at the bottom he said, understand that this Muhammad bin Uthman, his writing is my writing. Now imagine what that means. His writing is my writing. In other words, whatever he says is what I believe. In other words, there's never distortion in my message being transferred to him. He was such a trustworthy person. People asked him, oh, Muhammad bin Uthman, have you seen the Imam? He says, yes, I've seen him in Mecca. In Mecca, he was holding on to the Kaaba, and he was praying that, Ya Allah, allow me to avenge your enemies. Allow me to avenge your enemies. So this was Muhammad bin Uthman. Then came Hussein bin Rawh, who also served the 10th, 11th and 12th Imams. The reason why Hussein bin Rawh came are two. The two reasons why Hussein bin Rawh was elected as the deputy. And now when they were elected, what the Imam would do, he'd write a letter to his deputy and to say that the next Imam after you, the next deputy after you is so and so. Hussein bin Rawh was elected for two reasons. The first was that they said he was very sincere, pious mu'min. The second, the Imam was trying to show, is that you don't have to be from a certain family to be pious and to be chosen by me. So if there was Uthman bin Said, then his son, then another of his relatives came, people would think that, okay, look, the Imam is trying to tell us that it's only from a certain lineage that you can come and serve the Imam. The Imam wanted to show, no, you can be from whatever lineage and you can still serve me. Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin aw untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Very famous ayat of Surah Al-Hujurat. We created you in tribes and put you in different groups and gave you different languages, only so that you could be identified. Surely he who is most or closest to Allah and most honorable in the eyes of Allah is he who has taqwa. So Hussein bin Rawh was elected to show the people that you don't have to be from a certain lineage. Hussein bin Rawh Bakhti, to show that it doesn't matter where you're from, you can serve the Imam. Now, some people came up to a certain other person who was very pious. They say he was more pious, more knowledgeable than Hussein bin Rawh. They asked, why is it that you weren't elected as the deputy but Hussein bin Rawh was elected? He said, of course the Imam knows best. Maybe it is because I am constantly indulging within debates with other people of other madhahib. And maybe a time will come when they say something against the Imam and I say, you're lying, the Imam is right here. And I expose where the Imam is. Hussein bin Rawh, however, even if his head is going to be cut, he won't expose where the Imam is hiding. So this is Hussein bin Rawh, the third deputy. The fourth, then, Ali bin Muhammad Samri. Of course, very little is found about each of these deputies. Somewhere I read that Ali bin Muhammad Samri was the teacher of Sheikh Muhammad bin Yaqub al-Qulayni. Of course, such a great scholar. His teacher is Ali bin Muhammad Samri, showing that Ali bin Muhammad Samri was a man with knowledge. A man not just who had piety and sincerity and taqwa, also a man with knowledge. So when you look at these four deputies, also look at which characteristics they have. Then apply those characteristics to your own life so that the Imam can then choose us. For he chose these people. If we take the characteristics they have and imply them into our life, inshallah the Imam will choose us also. Ali bin Muhammad summary, just lastly on this question, before his death the Imam wrote to him. The Imam wrote to him saying, in 6 days you will pass away. Know that after me there will no longer be any other deputy, and it will go into Ghaibat Kubra.
Thank you. Quite practical there. You mentioned earlier on that the occultation of the Imam had been mentioned from the time of the Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also actually predicted and spoken about by all the Imams up to the time of the 11th Imam as well. So from my perspective is maybe that they were kind of preparing the people of that time to actually say that you might not have the contact with the Imam. But from a perspective of the hadith, could you perhaps enlighten us as to a few of the hadith that are present from the Ahlul Bayt with regards to occultation?
Okay. Many ahadith are mentioned, and inshallah we'll look at different ones with regards to different topics under the umbrella topic of the Imam in the future. However, a few with regards to the occultation and other important aspects. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, for example, he's narrated that certainly the rightful owner of this rule will have an occultation, such that one who adheres to his religion during it will be like the one who holds on to a thorn bush with his hands. Holding on to this thorn bush is very hard. It's painful. Blood will be seeping from your hands, but you're still holding on. In other words, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, many years previous to the time of Imam Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajah sharif, is telling us that look, there will come a time when my followers and the followers of the Holy Prophet of Islam and the followers of the true Islam will have a very hard time. And it will be very hard to hold on to their religion. As he says, like holding on to a thorn bush. However, they need to ensure that they remain steadfast within their faith and have strong faith. Then they said, then he observed silence for a while. The Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam then said, the rightful owner of this rule will have an occultation, so let the servant be God-wary and adhere to his religion. So he will have an occultation. But the servants, me and you, and of course the followers inshallah, we need to ensure that we're steadfast within our religion and we're not put off. Yes, the Imam isn't there, but inshallah he'll be with us quickly. It's only when we improve ourselves is he ready to come. He's waiting for us, not the other way around. That's one hadith, beautiful hadith. Other hadith, or for example, one who dies anticipating the rule of Imam Mahdi ajallahu ta'ala farajah sharif is as one who will be with the qa'im within his tent. So even if we die before the Imam ajallahu ta'ala farajah sharif arises, and before the Imam, as we say, qa'im, before he starts his revolution, even if we die before this, we will still, if we were waiting for him sincerely with a pure heart, without any other disease in our heart, then Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam says this means that we will be with him in his tent. Not only that, but he possesses the rank of one who fought with the sword in the presence of the Prophet. So it's like we did jihad with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only if we have this pure intention of waiting for the Imam, ajallahu ta'ala farajah sharif. And there are other interesting narrations. For example, this is probably the last one we look at. Again from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. For as we know, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam and Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, they have extensive narrations on many topics. Because at the time the Bani Abbas and Bani Umayyah were in conflict. So these two of the Imams salamullahi alayhim were able to propagate in an open and free way. The Imam says that this rule will not take place until every single type of people will have ruled over the people. So someone from every different tribe will have ruled, such that no one will be able to say that we did not rule, and justice wasn't present. So every single type of person will be able to rule before the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam comes.
Okay, so if that's the case, did the issue of ghaiba come up in any other Imam's life? Or should I say, did any other Imam actually undergo this type of occultation?
First, the issue of ghaiba. during the 6th Imam ﷺ's time, there was a person called Sayyid Himyari. Now this story or narration I'm about to narrate is in Mikyal al-Maqarim fi Fawaid al-Du'a lil-Qa'im. We mentioned this book last week when we spoke about Sa'ad al-Qummi Ash'ari and his whole story and the way he went to see the Imam. Sayyid Himyari, he came to Imam as-Sadiq ﷺ and he said, Ya Imam, I hear that in a gathering somewhere else, you called me a disbeliever. So the Imam says, yes. How can that person be a believer who doesn't believe in the hujjat of Allah who is on this earth? How can that person be a believer when he doesn't believe in the Imam? He doesn't believe in that person who is the proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sayyid Himyari, what did he believe? He believed that Muhammad bin Hanafiya was in ghaibah and that he was the true Imam. And so they would follow Muhammad bin Hanafiya rather than Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi. So what did the Imam do? The Imam says, how can someone who denies me as an Imam be called a believer? He said, Sayyid Himyari, come with me. Come with me. He took him to a certain area, then the Imam prayed 2 rakat salah. There was a grave there, then the Imam kicked or hit the grave. Out came a very old looking man covered in dust. He says, who are you? Imam Sadiq ﷺ says, who are you? He says, my name is Muhammad bin Hanafiya. Who am I? He says, you are the rightful Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi. So in this way, people would spread rumors that the true Imam Muhammad bin Hanafiya is in ghaibah. You mentioned about the topic of ghaibah, that he is in ghaibah. The Imam would try and prove to them that no, the Imam who is going to be in ghaibah is going to be the 12th from the descendants of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is one way in which the Imam discuss ghaibah. Otherwise you find that, for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself went into ghaibah. During the Hijrah, they were in ghaibah and they were concealed as he left his house and there were people there standing, waiting, looking. He passed them and they didn't realize and they were unable to see him because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had caused him to go into slight occultation. وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. A veil was placed on their eyes so that they could not see. So that's one. Or for example, Nabi Idris or Nabi Khazr, Nabi Idris, Nabi Khazr, they are alive today, but they are in ghaibah. Nabi Ilyas is within the woods. Nabi Khazr within the sea. So anyone who has any problems within the sea or is lost within the sea, or anyone who has problem within the woods or is lost within the woods, these Anbiya, salamullahi alayhima, which are still alive today, which are in ghaibah, are there to help. So we find that ghaibah wasn't just confined to our 12th Imam, isn't just confined to our 12th Imam, it's also present for Anbiya, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and also the other Aimma, for example, Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu had dealt with this issue of ghaibah and had to clear out certain facts to do with the occultation. Okay,
my next question is kind of in two parts. The first thing I'd like to do is recall a hadith that I once heard of when a man had asked Imam Sadiq alayhi salam that if the Imam goes into ghaibah, how are the people actually going to benefit? So that's one of my first questions, the fact that how are the people going to benefit from this ghaibah? But the Imam replied to this man, he said that the people will benefit from him just like we benefit from the sun on a cloudy day. Just because the sun is behind the cloud, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, we can still see it. Therefore, we still feel the presence of the Imam in ghaibah. So, is it possible then for us mu'mineen or the mu'mineen in general, the pious mu'mineen, to meet with the Imam in his absence?
Okay. The first part is what benefit are we gaining from the Imam being in occultation?
Exactly.
Primarily you find there are beautiful ahadith which say that whenever you are going to ziyarat, go for a very short period of time, come in and come out. This is related to the question. How? Why is this the case? Go to ziyarat, if you go to Najaf, go for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, don't stay there too long. If you go to Karbala, same. If you go to any of the other Imam alayhim or the infallibles or the Ahlul Bayt salamullahi alayhim, don't stay there for a very long time. Why? because we get used to these things. The first day we'll do the most dua, we'll give them the most respect. The 10th day, we won't even go. The 30th day, we'll go and we'll just quickly do our prayers and run away. Because we don't appreciate them. In the same way, the Imam being in occultation, what did this mean? This meant that we would appreciate the Imam. For people prior to us, who were able to physically see the Imam and ask them questions, they took advantage of this. Or for example, they didn't appreciate their Imams. They wouldn't go and meet them, they wouldn't supplicate for them, they wouldn't ask them questions. This ghaibah has meant that we value our Imam. We realize his importance. So those who may have forgotten the importance of their Imam, let that go. We need to ensure that we have, or we understand, or we realize the importance of our Imam.
And I guess that's what probably mentioned by the Prophet and by all the Imam, the Imams. They were trying to prepare them to say that, you know what, there'll be a day when you're not going to be having Imam with you.
Yeah.
So this kind of preparation
exactly
in that sense.
But it's also, that's the first reason, so that we have the value of the Imam. What role does the Imam play? If he was here, we can guarantee, yes, we would go and see him. But many people would forget about him. They wouldn't ask about him. They wouldn't write to him. Here we find we all write to him in Arida because he's in ghaibah. Here we find that we all supplicate to him because he's in ghaibah. So because he's in ghaibah, because he's in occultation, we understand the value of the Imam. That's the first thing. The other thing is, he's in ghaibah and we understand that a time will come when he will rise. However, this is dependent upon us. So we are pressurized in a way. Many people pressure free because they realize that my actions won't affect anyone else's. I can do gunnah, I can sin. I can be a shaky Muslim for a while. However, now that our actions depend on affect other people's action and affect the Imam's appraisal, this sort of pushing us in a way to do good, pushing us in a way to relieve our sins, pushing us in a way to become steadfast within our faith, so that this can then mean that the Imam comes, because his coming is dependent on us. So therefore we have a goal. The Imam being in occultation gives us a goal which we constantly strive for, which is getting the Imam out of occultation. So these are the two main benefits that we have. That we have a goal within our lives, to be with the Imam, to fight with the Imam, and we also understand the value of the Imam. So that's the first part of the question. What benefits are gained from the Imam being in ghaibah? The second part is are we able to see the Imam? For there is a narration in this letter to Ali bin Muhammad Samri. The Imam says, anyone, or many people quote this, anyone who says that they have seen me is a liar. This, what some people say, they've mixed up their words. What actually is anyone, this is what actually the Imam means. Anyone who claims that he is a deputy is a liar. What the Imam meant in his letter is that anyone who claims he is like a deputy like you four, or who is a deputy like the previous four deputies that I had, is a liar. No one can be a deputy, a certain deputy. For these deputies, there wasn't doubt whether they were deputies of the Imam or not. If anyone says we're definitely deputy, some people come. I'm the son of the Imam, or I'm the deputy of the Imam, he sent me to come to London, everything, whatever. The Imam says anyone who says it is a liar. This is what the Imam meant. Now the question comes, is it possible for us to see the Imam? Of course it's possible. Let's give you an anecdote. Allama Hilli rahmatullah alayhi, he had read once within a book that if you travel to Karbala on Thursday and do the a'mal, do the ziyarat of the Imam, visit the Imam, Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, and of course Hazrat Abbas salamullah alayhi. If you do this for 40 Thursdays, 40 Shabbar Jummah, 40 Jummarat continuously, you'll meet the Imam. Of course, within his mind, he was thinking, will I meet the Imam or will I not? Is it possible for us to meet the Imam? Many people say we can't meet the Imam. So this was within his mind. So first Thursday, second Thursday, of course, such a great scholar, they have this willpower. We may say we'll do this 40 days and the second day we're tired. On the second week we're tired. They have this strong willpower that every week if I've said I'll go once a week to Karbala, I'll do it. Because I have this goal in which I want to see the Imam. So the 40th night, the 40th Thursday came, he was on his horse. Now one thing important to mention is that a scholar, when they travel, when we travel, we'll think about the most vainest of things. We rarely think about religion, we rarely think about religious issues. A scholar, and especially a scholar of Allama Hilli's caliber, when he travels, he's constantly thinking about issues within his, which he has not found the answer to, for example. So Allama Hilli, what happened is, he was on his horse, and suddenly another person came, another Arab came, who was on his horse, and they began talking. They were both going to Karbala. Allama Hilli, hearing this person talk, realized that this person is quite clever. This person is something different. This person is a very good alim. Allama Hilli is saying that this person is very knowledgeable, not more knowledgeable than me, therefore I'll ask him questions. This man asked, what's on your mind, O Hilli? There's two things on my mind, two questions, pressing questions. Maybe you can answer them because you sound like a very knowledgeable person. The first question is it possible for me or for anyone to see the Imam? The second is, how is it that there is a hadith which says that if one person cries one drop for Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam, his whole sins will be wiped out? How are these two things possible? For the first thing, this person gave an example. He said, let's say there is a king. This king gets lost. So he's in the woods or something, he gets lost. He sees that there's this old woman. There's this old woman there. He goes to her, he says he's hungry. All she has, only one thing she has is this one goat. She kills that goat, cooks it, and gives the whole goat to him. Have this. And the milk that came out, she gave that to the king. She gave everything she had. Then what happens? Then the king goes back. And he says, if you're ever in my area, I will reward you. So she comes. Now, this man says, what would be right for him to reward her? Would it be right for him to reward her with a few things? He says, of course not. She gave everything she had, therefore it's only right if he gives everything he had. In the same way, this man says, Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam gave everything he had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the same way, Allah gave everything for Imam Hussein. So Allah gave Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam the power that even if someone cries one tear for you, I'll forgive all their sins, O Hussein. The second answer, he says, can you meet Imam Mahdi? The man says, you're meeting me right now, O Hilli. So this is the way the Imam explained to Allama Hilli that it is possible to meet me as long as you are pious and as long as you have a sincere intention.
MashaAllah. With one eye on the clock, I think that brings us to close to the end of our show. Dear viewers, a lot more to ask, and inshallah we'll perhaps continue this discussion in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for watching, dear viewers, and inshallah we hope you've gained a valuable insight from this discussion. I'd like to thank Brother Shabbar for his kind ability to educate us, and inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to strive in the right path. Inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.